Today, we're going to talk about types of handholds and different techniques. My name is Miss Lewis. I teach rock climbing for a living, and this is Mountain Syllabus. It's helpful to know how to identify holds and techniques because it will help you improve as a climber and to give better beta. It's also fun to learn because each climber may use a hold differently. Our first term is a jug. A jug is a nice, deep, stable hold that you can wrap your fingers into. You can remember it by thinking of like the handle on a milk jug. On our fingers, we have 3 different pads here. When you're using a jug, you can typically wrap all of those pads on with all 4 of your fingers into the hold. Our next term is a crimp. A crimp is typically a tiny hold. This is when you can only use the first 1, maybe 2 pads on your fingers. You can crimp 2 different ways, with an open grip or a closed grip. An open grip is when your palm is able to rest flat on the rest of the rock, and a closed grip is when you're utilizing that thumb to give you a much more powerful move. Our next term is mantle. While climbing, you might be able to put your palm onto a hold, typically something like a ledge. Then a mantle is the motion of pushing yourself up and locking your elbow underneath you. This reminds me of pushing yourself up out of a pool. Next up is a side pull. This is when you climb by pulling from the side rather than pulling from the top. This can be done straight out or across your body. Next up is a pinch. Pinching is pretty straightforward. Think if you were a crab and you use your entire hand as a claw onto a hold. You lock your thumb onto the side. This technique can depend on the size of the hold and also the size of your hand. Our next term is pocket. Pockets are typically things that you can put stuff into. In this case, it will be your hand. Pockets are essentially holes in the rock. Sometimes you can fit your whole hand into them or maybe just a few fingers. Which brings us to our next type of hold, mono. A mono is a 1-finger pocket. Your middle finger is actually your strongest, so remember that if you're ever utilizing a 1-finger pocket. Next up is hand jam. Hand jamming is a very unique type of climbing used when there is a crack in the rock. Depending on the size of the crack, you may need 1 or both hands to jam into it. It's an advanced technique and there are many different configurations to utilize when hand jamming, so we'll go over that more in depth in a different video. Our next term is sloper. A sloper is when you grab onto a sloped surface rather than onto the edge of a rock. Imagine trying to hold a basketball with only 1 hand. It's difficult to do because there aren't any substantial features to put your fingers onto, rather just a sloped surface to put your hand around. You'll have to use friction to keep you on until you can find better features to pull on. Our last term is undercling. An undercling is a hold that you grab from the bottom and pull up on. Generally speaking, your body weight will be pulling against it, typically from above. All right, we just went over a ton of new terms. Try to identify these holds and techniques next time you go out climbing. Remember not to overgrip so you can save energy and rest on your skeletal structure whenever possible. I'm Miss Lewis, and this is Mountain Syllabus.